Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel that takes you deep inside the San Francisco 49ers. I am your host, Jack Hammer. It is Thursday. It is time to talk about Kyle Shanahan. It is time to hold 49ers head coach Kyle Shanahan accountable. It is time. We're going to do it today. Here's the thing. We're going to get into it as I'm going through it. If you guys have questions, if you have comments, hit me up in the comment section. I'll get to them. If you have questions outside of Kyle Shanahan, we'll get to that in this show as well. We're going to start off, though, with Kyle Shanahan. We are going to hold him accountable. It is time. It's been way too long. We haven't got to hold him accountable yet. So let's get into it. We got to get into it. You know, if you're wondering what I'm talking about, if you're in the comment section, if you're like Gregus Khan over here in the comment section who's asking me, hold him accountable for what? Winning? Well, let's get into it. You know, if you've been on social media at all over the last few years, one of the biggest things that you hear about all the time, it's probably one of the main tropes that you've heard, is that you need to hold Kyle Shanahan accountable. Well, in this case, what we're going to be holding him accountable for is, well, let's look at it. You may be asking yourself, what are you holding him accountable for? Like Gregus was there again. But I think it's a great question, especially when you consider the 49ers have been one of the best teams in the NFL over these last 4 seasons. You know, you look back over Kyle Shanahan's tenure in San Francisco, they took over a team that was completely bereft of talent back in 2017. It was one of the worst organizations in the NFL when they came in 2017. And the 49ers from there built with Kyle Shanahan, with John Lynch. You know, when you look at this whole argument about the quarterback position in San Francisco, that's what this all comes back to, right? You look at it, again, 63.6% win percentage since 2019. Over these last 4 seasons, that's the 5th best in the NFL, second only to Green Bay in the NFC in terms of regular season wins. In addition to that, they've reached a Super Bowl and consecutive NFC championship games over this time. This is just the last 4 years, right? Let's be real here for a second. This whole hold Kyle Shanahan accountable movement that you're seeing even now, if you spend any time on social media, on 49ers Twitter, if you pay attention to what people are saying out there, other content creators, they're talking about the need to hold Kyle Shanahan accountable for his mistakes at the quarterback position. But let's be real about this for a second. It's not about holding Kyle Shanahan accountable. What it's about is not liking the quarterback that he's winning with and the belief that Kyle Shanahan mishandled Trey Lance. And it all really comes back to that. The people that really want to hold Kyle Shanahan accountable are the people who have been over the top in believing that Trey Lance was the future, that Trey Lance was the guy. And a lot of those people, you can date that even back before Trey Lance was even a member of the 49ers. And it's not even just Trey Lance. Again, it's just the quarterback position as a whole. If we go through it really quick, if you just allow me a moment to kind of go through Kyle Shanahan's tenure as the 49er head coach and go through his quarterback decisions or where he's been. Let's go through it. Let's take a look at it. You know, Glass City says, let's stay objective and not let emotional attachment to players get in the way of that. I think the emotional attachment to some players, especially at the quarterback position, is why. I also think, you know, you look at it, and one of the things that's happened is the 49ers, Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, like I said, they didn't have much talent when they got here. So what they did was when they came in, yeah, they didn't go after Patrick Mahomes in 2017. Why didn't they go after Patrick Mahomes in 2017? Again, they had no talent on this roster. And the 49ers, under Kyle Shanahan, under John Lynch, they feel that you win games up front. That by building up front on offense, building up front on defense, helps you to win games. That's the best way to win. From there, if you have a good defensive line that helps out the rest of that unit, good offensive line helps out that side. They want to run the ball. They want to control the ball. And at the end of the day, one of the things that I think has caught up with some 49er fans, or some fans in general, of professional football nowadays, is the whole fantasy football stat nature of it. You know, the 49ers under Kyle Shanahan, they've never been a team that's aired it out big time. They, you know, they're usually right around like the low 20s, you know, like 25th to 31st or somewhere in that range in terms of a number of attempts over the course of a season. Meanwhile, they're usually one of the higher teams in terms of rushing attempts. When you look at the 49ers over this 4-year period where they've been winning at a high rate, they have run the ball at a very high number, not necessarily with doing it through the pass. Although they will start off games, people think of it just as a running team, but they'll start off throwing the ball. They'll start off throwing the ball when they have a quarterback that can throw the ball. They like to do that. They don't like to come out and just, it's not a 5 yards and a cloud of dust offense. What Kyle Shanahan's offense is it's old school West Coast offense with a power shot play that comes off of it, right? Coffee Buzz 33, 48 and 24 in Kyle's last 4 seasons. All Kyle does is win, 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 right? And that's the thing. He's winning a lot. And you go back to 2017. You guys kind of got me off track there, but I got to stay on track. Come on, Jack. In 2017, they wanted to build up the fronts, right? And so one of the things that people say is, well, you decided that you were going to go after Kirk Cousins, and then at some point along the line, you decided that you were going to pivot and go to why didn't you just stick with with where you were, right? Why didn't you stick with your game plan? Well, here's the reason. Here's why the 49ers made the audible that they made. They were 1-10 at the time. They'd only had one win prior to Jimmy Garoppolo taking over in 2017. But in 2017, the thought was that the 49ers were going to go after Kirk Cousins in that free agency period. Well, what happened was Kirk Cousins wasn't a sure thing, right? Kirk Cousins was not a sure thing for the 49ers after that 2017 season. He was going to be a free agent. There was a possibility that the Vikings could even keep him around and lock him up with the franchise tag and all those kind of things. There was lots of things that could happen. He was not a sure thing. The 49ers got the call. They were offered a quarterback who a lot of people felt was a potential franchise type quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo, and they took it. And the reason they took it was because Jimmy Garoppolo was a sure thing. By trading for Jimmy Garoppolo, that gave the 49ers time to evaluate him within their system. And if you can take yourself back to 2017, to that season, into that 2018 offseason, it was really easy to figure out what the 49ers were going to pay Jimmy Garoppolo, what his average annual salary was going to be. And the reason I say that is because because he was in the last year of his contract, the 49ers were either going to offer him a long-term deal or they were going to give him the franchise tag because they had him under control for 2 years. They could franchise tag him for 2017, and then they could franchise tag him for 2018. So they had him under control, whereas that's why I'm saying that's why I say Garoppolo was a sure thing. I'm not saying he was a sure thing in that he was going to play well, but he was a sure thing in that they were going to actually be able to get him as compared to Kirk Cousins. So they went out and they made the move. And then if you take yourself back to 2017, another piece of this, well, before I get to that, let's just look at the contract really quick. All the contract was for Jimmy Garoppolo was the contract number that he would have been given if the 49ers decided to franchise tag him. They basically took that number, spread it out over 5 years. And what that allowed the 49ers to do was allow the 49ers to then move the cap hits around to make the most sense to them. Right? And that was a positive for them. They got the guy. And then where you go from there is you start to look at the performance of Jimmy Garoppolo. In 2017, in that regular season, they won 5 in a row. And everybody, and I do mean everybody when it comes to 49ers reporters, was saying that Jimmy Garoppolo was the real deal. Jimmy Garoppolo was the guy. There's not any name that you could give me right now of 49ers beat reporter who was covering the team in 2017 who would have told you that Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't for real. And how do I know that? Because I asked. Right? And Jimmy Garoppolo was the real deal in 2017 to everybody. And Jimmy Garoppolo was the real deal until that offseason. And in that offseason of 2017, or going into 2018, that's when everything changed. because all of a sudden, what you needed to do is you needed to switch it up. You can't always be on that guy's side if you want to have the clicks and the hits and all those kind of things. So you saw the negativity start coming about Jimmy Garoppolo. The contract was just another piece of that. But even before that, there were questions about Jimmy Garoppolo. There was a lot of stuff around him, right? So, you go into 2018, you go into, and that's where things go wrong, because in 2018, Jimmy Garoppolo goes out, he gets hurt, and 2018, 2019, or 2018, 2020, those are 2 seasons that Jimmy Garoppolo loses completely. But in 2019, they win games, right? Apart from that 5 weeks that I mentioned, he was a constant lightning rod of negativity. But when he was on the field, in his 55 starts, the 49ers were 38-17. The only time that he played in a season where they weren't at least 500 was 2018, and they were 1-2. In 2020, as bad as he played in some of those games, they were still 3-3 in Jimmy Garoppolo starts. And the thing about it is, you got to remember that without Jimmy Garoppolo, this was a team that in 2018 and 2020 was able to win only 9 games. With Jimmy Garoppolo on the field in 2019, the 49ers went to the Super Bowl. And then even in 2019, as the 49ers were going to the Super Bowl, even if you look back at that season now and you talk about Jimmy Garoppolo in that 2019 season, people, all they'll do is talk. They hear constant negativity about that. And I understand that they lost the Super Bowl. Jimmy Garoppolo, his postseason performance was nothing to write home about. He had a quick start to the game against the Vikings, and then fizzled out pretty much the rest of that first postseason run that the 49ers had going to the Super Bowl. I get it. But I think what people forget is that the 49ers probably don't even reach the Super Bowl if Garoppolo wasn't the quarterback, because along the way to getting to that Super Bowl, the 49ers had the best record in the NFC. And because they had home field advantage, it dictated a lot of things for them. It really helped them out. Without having home field advantage, I don't think that 2019 team makes it all the way to the Super Bowl. I just don't. I think that was one of the big pieces. If they didn't have home field advantage, the other thing to remember is if the 49ers don't have home field advantage in 2019, that means that they lose in Seattle. And not only do they not have home field advantage in the playoffs, but they're a wild card team, which means they now have to win 3 in a row. I think at that time they would have had to be all on the road, right? Because they weren't the division champ, so they would have been on the road. And the 49ers, instead, they beat Seattle. They get the home field advantage, and they helps them get to the Super Bowl. So, while Jimmy Garoppolo wasn't good in the postseason, a big reason why was because of his performance. And I understand this one, Sean, 9519ers, thank you. He says, inside the 49ers with Jack Hammer, Greenlaw got them to the Super Bowl in Game 17, and that's a good point. He did. He was a part of it. It wasn't just Jimmy Garoppolo. It's never just, and that's one of the other arguments that I make all the time. It's never just one guy. It's never just Patrick Mahomes, although he helps elevate that team because of how great he is. But even then, he still needs to get help from other guys. The defense helped them out, like in the Super Bowl with a touchdown, the Super Bowl that they just won out in Kansas City. Their special teams helped them out with a punt return to set the offense up deep inside the red zone. He got help along the way in that Super Bowl run. And Garoppolo got help here too. That definitely was a great play by Dre Greenlaw. Dre Greenlaw's play doesn't matter if Jimmy Garoppolo and the offense didn't give him the lead to start with, right? Not that his numbers were great. Jimmy Garoppolo's numbers usually weren't, but it's not even about just that one game. Take yourself back to New Orleans, the win against the Saints, where Garoppolo had to make throws and he had to win a shootout 48-46. Take yourself back to the game against the Rams a couple of weeks before the late in the season, that game against the Rams on that Saturday night, where the 49ers are down and Jimmy Garoppolo has to make some big throws in order to get the team into position to win that game, right? He made some big throws for that team to win the game. So there's a lot of things like that when it comes to the Jimmy Garoppolo thing. And I think a lot of people just didn't like Jimmy Garoppolo. To an extent, I understand it. the biggest thing for me, and I think where the 49ers decided that it was time to make a change, was they lost all of the 2018 season. They decided to ride with Garoppolo going into 2020 after the Super Bowl. They felt like they were on the right track, right? However, they give up. They don't go with uh, Tom Brady in 2020. And I mean, if you go back and you look at the numbers at that time, it made some financial sense for them not to make that move and for them to stick with Jimmy because it was going to cost them a lot of money. And there was a lot of reasons behind that. I don't think it was just because I don't think the reason for not going after Tom Brady was just because they didn't like him. I think there was a lot of financial pieces to that as well. Um, the other thing too, as you kind of look through the quarterback, then you get to 2020, you get to that season, he goes down in week 2, right? In week 2 he goes down, and they try to bring him back, and finally the game in Seattle's the one that just is kind of the clincher because they're kind of in that spot where they're fighting for their for themselves. They're in a really good. They're kind of coming back. They'd gotten themselves to 500. They had won a couple of tough games in a row. With Garoppolo out in New England and so on and so forth. So they were on a little bit of a roll. They go up there and Garoppolo gets hurt again. And when he comes out of that game, I remember writing an article at that time for Sports Illustrated saying that Garoppolo, it was time to be done. It was time to move on. It was time to move on. And I think the 49ers felt that way too. And you look at, listening to Kyle Shanahan talk, one of the things that he said recently was, there's a lot of people who have hit on the Niners and said the biggest mistake the 49ers made in this whole trade up to number 3 in 2021 was that they traded up without knowing who they were going to take. Well, what happened was the 49ers, if we just look at it in reality, what happened is the 49ers went into that offseason. They knew that they needed to make a change. They wanted to go after a veteran. They wanted to go after Deshaun Watson. They wanted to go after Matthew Stafford. They didn't get it. They were ready to take those guys and take on the financial responsibility that it was going to take. They didn't get them. So what's the next thing you do? Okay, so we missed out on the veterans. We're at number 12. If we perform how we expect to perform, we're not going to be in this position again for a while. So we're here. Let's take a shot. Let's get up and let's take a guy that we want, that we really believe in. So they took the shot. They got up to 3. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? So they took the shot. They gave up 3 first-round picks and a third-round pick to move up to 3 with the Dolphins. And Kyle Shanahan has said a number of times that when they made that move, they had 2 guys in mind. He doesn't say who they are, but they had 2 guys in mind when they traded up. So it's not like they traded up not knowing who they were going to take. They traded up knowing they were going to take 1 or 2 guys, and by being in that spot, they were going to get their pick of those guys. There was other players possibly involved that were, in terms of the quarterback spot, so they were going to show everybody. But in their minds, they had 2 guys in mind. We know that they went to the pro days of, Wilson and Mac Jones and Trey Lance, and they were out there for Justin Fields as well. We know they were there, but at the end of the day, they had 2 guys in mind. Even though they went to all these other ones, it was 2 guys. As Jacobs893 says here, I do agree. I do think it was Mac Jones and Trey Lance. I don't think it was the others. It was Mac Jones and Trey Lance. Sean9519er says, no, they wanted Rodgers and called for him before draft night, and Green Bay said no. Good for Green Bay. We would have multiple Super Bowls by now, and that's fine. Again, you got to remember the Rodgers thing popped up right before the draft, right? The whole thing with Rodgers popped up right before the draft. So again, you're at 3. Hey, let's go ahead and let's see if we can get a proven vet that we know is going to do well. So that's okay. But I think the trade up was because at that point, Rodgers wasn't available to them. Once they found out there might be an option to get Rodgers, then they make the phone call. It's like a 2-minute phone call, what have you. It doesn't work out. So they decide that they're going to draft Trey Lance. So they decide that they're going to draft Trey Lance, number 3 overall in 2021. And that kind of, I don't want to change yet where we are. I still want to keep looking at this, because if you look at the 49ers, and again, it's all about these people that are saying you need to hold him accountable, or saying they're accountable really because they just don't like the quarterback. They didn't like Garoppolo, right? And then on the other side of that, it's the same thing with Brock Purdy. The final pick of the draft steps in for Garoppolo, in week 13 of last season, doesn't lose until the NFC Championship game when he's left unable to throw due to the injury. His performance was awesome. He played great last year. And I don't usually use great. I usually say things like terrific or good. I usually don't say great a lot because I think it's really overused. But let's face it, if you watch the film and you watch the guy play, he was great as a rookie. And despite that performance, his detractors have spent this entire offseason picking it apart. Every positive turned into a negative. Doesn't have enough arm strength. He can't get bigger. He's playing with Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle. Yada yada yada. The people that are all saying that, that last one is the one that's the giveaway, because it's factual that maybe his arm isn't the strongest in the world. It's 100% accurate. He's not going to get bigger. I don't think the 49ers have a stretching machine where all of a sudden he's going to come out and he's going to be 6'5", right? But it's the playing with Christian McCaffrey and the George Kittle one that gives it away when you hear people say that, or when you heard people say that. Because what that was all about, he was playing with Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle, but this guy that I wanted to play quarterback didn't get a chance to play with them, so it doesn't really count. And that's what we heard. And again, you kind of look at it, and the other thing that everybody wants to say is the 49ers mishandled Trey Lance. So you make the move up, you get Trey Lance, right? You got Trey Lance now. What are you going to do? And if you followed the 49ers for any length of time over these last 2 years, the rallying cry, the drumbeat has always been what? Unfortunately, you guys can't respond to me verbally, but the drumbeat since 2021 is Trey Lance needs to play. Trey Lance needs to play. He's not going to get better unless he plays, right? That's what we heard over and over and over again. And because he didn't play, everybody says Kyle Shanahan's screwing up. We need to hold Kyle Shanahan accountable because he's not playing Trey Lance. We need to hold Kyle Shanahan accountable because he's screwing up Trey Lance. Well, that just completely misses everything that took place. Seriously. Trey Lance was given every opportunity to be the starting quarterback in 2021. Trey Lance was given every opportunity to play in 2021. They wanted him to get on the field. He had an opportunity week 4, got hurt. Because he's hurt, they have to go to Jimmy Garoppolo. I've been through this a lot on this channel. Beyond that, yes, and that's the other one. I'm sorry, Khalid, that's a good one too. When it goes back to Brock Purdy, yeah, the whole dink and dunk. Right. If you watch Trey Lance play at all, it really describes him too in the way that he threw the ball. But kind of staying on track, you look at it, and when it comes to the 49ers getting Trey Lance on the field, they tried. He got a start in week 5, In week 4, Jimmy Garoppolo gets injured against the Seahawks. Trey Lance plays the second half of that game. The 49ers had gone into that game, I think at halftime they were tied at 7. They come out losing that game. They go the following week. He starts against Arizona. He plays okay. He doesn't play as bad as it kind of looks at first. If you really dig into it, they had some positions where they could have made some things happen. There were some mistakes from other guys. There was just enough mistakes from everybody else that it's not just his fault, which is an accurate statement. Definitely wasn't just his fault that they lost that game. But they lose. And the bigger thing of that game was that Lance injures his knee. And people are going to yell and scream about that because Kyle Shanahan ran him so often. There was a lot of runs. And then you take a second, you watch the film, and you see a lot of quarterback sneaks. You see draws. Draws are almost like a scramble, except for they're designed And so, in some ways, a designed scramble like a draw for a quarterback is less can be a little bit less likely to get him injured because he has blockers down the field to lead for him, right? So when you kind of get into it, it's everybody wants to point to all of the and say it was quarterback power. He was used like a fullback. When I hear these things and I hear Kyle Shanahan shouldn't have been using Trey Lance as a running back, I just got to say this, and I'm not trying to put anybody down, but if you watched Trey Lance in college, this is the guy that ran the ball a lot, especially at the end of the season when they were playing for the championship. When the things got tight, they ran the hell out of Trey Lance at North Dakota State. And the championship game, the FCS championship game in 2018, he ran the ball 30 times. That's why during that film breakdown, that's where the whole Trey Lance and Tim Tebow comparison came from, that you sometimes see floating around on Twitter, was because of that game, because of the way that they utilized him as a running back. I like this one. This is a good one from PN. You can't clean this up, clown. He was used as a fullback. You moron. Yeah. It says more about you than it does me. I understand. I've had this argument with people. This discussion, is one of the reasons why I stopped doing shows with one person in particular. But the reality is, he wasn't used like a fullback. Fullbacks block. He was used as a quarterback, and they were using him to the best of what he does because he wasn't ready to make all the throws at that point yet. They still used him that way later on too. And so, beyond that whole thing. So, okay, he injures his leg against Arizona. What that does is that means he doesn't get to play. The 49ers, Kyle Shanahan wanted to keep playing him. He talked about it after how he was bummed that Lance was hurt because they wanted to keep using him. Didn't work out. He plays really well against Houston, and that sets up the stage for 2022. He plays 5 quarters, not even 5 quarters, and he's out. And that's it. And that's kind of the other thing too. When you hear the arguments against the mishandling of it, you hear people talk about the lack of starts and how Trey Lance got just 4 starts in the NFL. Well, he got 4 starts just because he got 4 starts because of injuries. The knee injury after the start against Arizona, and then the ankle injury in the start against the Seahawks at Levi's that ended the season. If it's not for those injuries, I would bet you a lot of money that he would have way more than 4 starts. The plan was for him to get 17 starts in 2022 alone. If he hadn't been injured in 2021, he probably would have got more there. And then the reason that they moved on from him, it's simple. Brock Purdy stepped up, and they realized that he was the guy, right? They realized that he was the guy. Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, they told you all along that they felt like Brock Purdy was the starting quarterback. So that's why on Friday they pulled the plug on Trey Lance, sent him to the Cowboys for a 2024 4th-round pick. And then you can ask yourself, was the trade up in 2021 a mistake? 100%. Absolutely. It was a mistake. Now, I'm not even saying that as a knock on Trey Lance. It just was a mistake because it didn't work out. They spent 3 first rounds, didn't work, picks and a third, didn't work out. It's the worst draft trade in 49ers history. But here's the thing, and I think this is the bigger fact. The NFL is about wins and losses, not draft picks. So while Shanahan missed on the pick, he's still winning, which is packing Levi Stadium and in turn making Jed York a lot of money. Yeah, they're taking a little bit of heat right now because of it, all that stuff. But here's the thing. If they win, it doesn't matter. Everybody's going to forget about it except for the people who are already pissed off about it. And for those of you that are really wanting to hold Kyle Shanahan accountable, that's okay. Keep your pitchforks ready. Don't get rid of them. Keep them in the garage. Because if things don't work out with Brock Purdy and the 49ers fail to win, you can bet that Shanahan and Lynch will be held accountable by Jed York. That's just the way it is. And until then, just enjoy all the winning because that's what the 49ers have done for the last 4 years. The 49ers have won at a very high level. So they haven't won a Super Bowl. That's the goal, and that's the end game moving forward now. Uh, I've heard a lot of other things about this situation. I saw a tweet yesterday about how, Kyle Shanahan talked positively of Josh Allen, um, and wishes he had taken him in 2018. And I mean, if you want to go back to that, that was in 2020. In 2020, he also spoke very highly of Carson Wentz, talked about how good Carson Wentz was coming out, what a good player he was, and how it would have been nice to be able to have drafted Carson Wentz. Well, if you want to say that the positive words that Shanahan said in 2020 indicate that he was ready to move on and that's who he was going to get, or, he wished that he had him in 2018 instead of Jimmy Garoppolo, then what you're saying is that Kyle Shanahan wishes that he had Carson Wentz in 2016 with the Atlanta Falcons instead of Matt Ryan. You understand how silly that sounds? There's so much parsing of the words to try to fit a narrative. And the reason that all this is happening is because people just didn't like Jimmy Garoppolo. People didn't like Jimmy Garoppolo. Everybody wanted Jimmy Garoppolo gone. All Jimmy Garoppolo did was win. Everybody's pissed off at Kyle Shanahan. We need to hold him accountable like we're doing right now. All Kyle Shanahan's done for the last 4 years is win. When Kyle Shanahan stops winning, that's when he'll be held accountable. You start to look through this roster right now. There's a couple of things. Thomas Pfeiffer, you're right. All he does is win. He wins games, period. And that's what matters. And, I think we've talked about it here. When you look at it, part of the knock on Brock Purdy is it's clear. One of the reasons that it's easy to knock Brock Purdy is because he makes the game look easy. He doesn't look like he's out of sorts. Every once in a while, things get a little wild with him, a little wonky, but for the most part, he plays pretty good. And this is this again is 100% driven by the need to have content and to get people to read and watch, right? Sean 9519er saying, hey, Jack, tell these fans that Cousins is not coming to San Francisco. In order to keep this core, we need a rookie quarterback contract or Ayuk gone, et cetera, after this year. That's 100% accurate. Kirk Cousins isn't coming to San Francisco. Kirk Cousins is near the end of the road. The only way the 49ers can make a Kirk Cousins deal done is if they give him a long contract and decide that they're going to eat a ton of money down the road, which they're not going to do because they are now at a spot where they have, doing the Kirk Cousins deal in doing what they're talking about here, bringing Cousins in. If you did that in 2021, it makes a little bit more sense because you can, load the contract up in different ways and make it work. But doing it now where, he's on the later end of his career, it just doesn't make sense. Here's the other thing. Kirk Cousins in the 49ers offense, he might be all right. He does pretty damn good in Kyle Shanahan's offense, or version of Kyle Shanahan's offense out in Minnesota. He has some really good playmakers out there. He doesn't win in the playoffs. Did we not just watch the playoffs last year where they had fourth and long and he threw a 3-yard pass? Again, I don't dislike Kirk Cousins at all. He seems like a really good guy. He's a good quarterback. You're not winning Super Bowls with Kirk Cousins. And I think that's the other thing too. When you look at quarterback position as a whole, you want to get into the quarterback quarterback discussion. You can win games in a lot of different ways, but Kirk Cousins has had a lot of good teams around him and hasn't been able to put it together when it's counted. And like Red Eye says, he's 35 already. He's done. Antoine Ferguson's right. Brock can make all the throws. I agree. I've watched him do it. He can make every throw that the 49ers ask him to make. Uh, doesn't mean that he's going to be accurate on all of them. But, you look at the throws and 20-yard throws, 20-plus yard throws are considered deep throws in the NFL. And his percentages are pretty high in terms of what his numbers are there, just to kind of give you an idea really quick. Let's take a look at Brock Purdy's numbers, just because this is a fun thing to do. I had a lot of fun with this during the offseason when it came to, Brock Purdy and that whole dink and dunk discussion. I had a lot of fun with that because I thought it was a good time. It's one of those things where you have people that like Trey Lance that need to try to knock down the guy that's ahead of them to make themselves feel better about the player that they like. But if we look at Brock Purdy last season, let's look at Brock Purdy in 2022. And I'm going to combine the postseason just because that gives them more attempts. It gives them a little bit higher numbers. Last season on throws beyond 20 yards. Remember, they consider that deep. On throws beyond 20 yards or more. Last season, Brock Purdy on throws beyond 20 yards, deep throws, that's what they consider it. He completed 40.7% of his pass attempts. 40.7, 11 out of 27. He went deep beyond 20 yards 11.6% of the time. Now, this isn't fair. Some people will say it's not accurate because of who he faces. But, you compare that to Patrick Mahomes, who's at 44.3. That's a couple percentage points higher. I think that's about 2 completions. If Brock Purdy hit 1 or 2 more, then they're tied. Patrick Mahomes last year, he threw the ball beyond 20 yards 9.4% of the time. That's lower than Brock Purdy. And the argument's been made that he faced too high coverage so much that's why he did that. And that's not accurate. Jimmy Garoppolo last season with the 49ers saw 2 deep coverage at the exact same rate as during the regular season as Trey Lance, or not Trey Lance, excuse me, as Patrick Mahomes. Woo! But yeah, he can make all the throw. His arm isn't healed. It's probably not fully healed. I mean, the guy just got surgery 6 months ago. I would say it's probably not fully healed. It's healed enough for him to make every throw that the players are asking him to make in training camp. And, we talked about this the other day. This is coming up again because of the fact that he was seen not making all of the throws during practice on Monday. He's been doing that all along. He really has. I can't wait until Kyle is fired. He's arrogant, egotistical. We need an elite quarterback, not just an elite coach who's scared to coach an elite quarterback. Sorry. Yeah, I think every person in the NFL would tell you that they would like to have an elite quarterback. They don't grow on trees. And I think if you watch Brock Purdy, if he goes out, if Brock Purdy plays the way this season that he played last year, the elite thing is going to start to sneak into that conversation because he was really good. Glass City, thank you for the super chat. Says, Jack, what is your response to the whole more film on Brock and now he will regress argument? I don't buy it one bit. Yeah, I don't buy it either. Here's one of them. Brock Purdy went up to Seattle and he beat the Seahawks in Seattle. Went up there, took care of business, won the game, played that game with broken ribs. Remember, it was a short week. It was a tight game. They got some breaks. Brock Purdy got a couple of breaks on a couple of bad throws, especially one down the middle that should have been intercepted that wasn't. That really turned that game in their favor, but he played decent in that game. And then he played Seattle again in the postseason. Played them in the wild card game. And in that NFC wild card game, he put up over 300 yards, huge numbers. They had film on him. They'd played him already before. They already knew what they were getting themselves into. He still whooped their 49ers, still whooped them. Trock Talk says the 40. Thank you very much for your super chat. I appreciate it. That was a good one. Trock Talk says Niners are a yak team filled with playmakers. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that plays into the 49ers. That plays into help Brock Purdy, obviously. It helps any quarterback that's on this roster because they have so many playmakers. That's absolutely 100%. And the term yak, I always like to just say one of the things when it comes to people using yak as a way to knock a quarterback is, as a 49er fan, we need to be smart enough to understand where the term yak came from. The term yak came from the 49ers back in the 80s because under Bill Walsh, they threw the ball and those guys made yards after the catch. John Madden deemed it, I think he might have called it rack at that time, but it's the same thing, run after catch, yards after catch, either way. That was 49er thing. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Sarah, the domestic goddess with the super chat, says, so thankful to hear a logical man in this space. I try to. I appreciate it. I would say I think every once in a while I get a little off center, but for the most part I try to stay in that logical lane. That seems to be my lane. I'll leave the crazy stuff to some other folks. Sean 951 Niners, Jack Hammer, Brock is not the type of quarterback that will be affected with film from D coordinators. Kyle schemes for that as he knows his quarterback's weakness. Purdy is legit and runs the offense smooth. And I agree. And I that's the other thing that I would put up there too, is that I would think that everybody who comes out and says that film on Brock Purdy is going to knock his performance this season, most of those folks will also tell you that Shanahan is a very good play caller. And then he gets his guys open. All those kind of things. I don't think that Kyle Shanahan will allow Brock Purdy to get beat by film. I think Brock Purdy's a good enough player to understand that. And I think that Kyle Shanahan is good with that too. And I think together, the two of them together are able to beat that. I think when you look at it, I think, Kirk Cousins has the bigger track record. Obviously, we're only 8 games into Brock Purdy's career. When all is said and done, Brock Purdy is going to have the better career. Glass City says, please do a show with Johnny Dell. Jack. Hey, Johnny's one of the good guys. Johnny, I love Johnny. I've done a show with him in the past. I did a thing on his channel this off season. He came on my channel for a roundtable. That was a lot of fun. But I love Johnny. And one of the reasons Johnny's my kind of guy, because Johnny is not a drama guy. Johnny's a full-on film freak, understands the game, talks it how it is, and that's why I like him. And so if you're not following Johnny Dell, I believe that you should, because that guy is one of the best out there. His film breakdowns are second to mine. I'm kidding. He does it different than I do. I do mine live. He does his recorded. He's a lot more technologically savvy than I am, so he gives you some things that I don't. So what I would suggest is you watch mine, you watch his, you watch both of them together. You're going to see a lot of the same things. You're going to see some different things. I think we see the game very similarly, but different at the same time. So check out Johnny's channel, check out his film reviews, and if you could, check out mine too. KW2421 with the super chat says, how much of a parallel can you draw between Andy Reid's and Shanahan's careers? Offensive geniuses that never won a ring, never won the big one until they got a superstar at quarterback. Do you think Purdy is that guy? I think there's a ton of parallels if you look at that. This is something I think a lot of people have mentioned this offseason is, Andy Reid is looked at right now as the guy now. But Andy Reid in Philly was not looking that way. Andy Reid until 2019 was looked at as the lovable loser, the guy that could get there but couldn't win it. That's very much Kyle Shanahan, right? And Kyle Shanahan's career arc is very similar to Reid's. He's been to the Super Bowl once and lost. Just like Andy Reid had been to the Super Bowl and lost. Andy Reid lost a number of NFC Championship games. Kyle Shanahan's been there too. Uh, can Brock Purdy be that guy? I think so. I think so. You know, the thing with Brock Purdy, it's not just the 5 games that he won in the regular season, 6, I think it is, if you include the game against Miami. But it's not just his performance in the regular season, which was dynamite. I think that his performance in the postseason was as good as anything we've seen from the 49ers in a long, long time. Maybe even, the performance of Colin Kaepernick up in, he had a really nice Colin Kaepernick. He had 2 really nice back-to-back postseason runs, 2012, 2013. That 2013 run was really nice up until the fourth quarter in Seattle. It fell apart, but other than that, it was pretty good. And what we saw out of Brock Purdy last year that's what playoff football looks like. Playoff football is different than regular season football. It's just not as free flowing. It's a little bit more. It's tougher because you're playing against better competition. And what he did and how he managed the game against Dallas, I thought was really good. If you go back and you watch the Dallas game and you look at his numbers and you start to look at the throws that were the incompletions in that game, there's like 3 or 4 throws at the end of the first half that were incompletions, that were designed incompletions, and not to say designed, but basically they were trying to get the clock down. If this guy's open on the sideline, throw it. Otherwise, throw it over their heads out of bounds. But we basically want to run the clock down so we can kick a field goal here. We're going to take a shot. If it's not open, throw it out of bounds, that kind of thing. And, nobody wants to pay attention to it because that, it's too much work, but that's one of the other things too. So I really think that especially the postseason play really showed me what Brock Purdy's about. I think he is a guy that's going to be I think Brock Purdy, just to kind of go back to this term, because we're holding Kyle Shanahan accountable right here. I'll say this. I think that Kyle Shanahan was right when he called Brock Purdy the real deal. I do think that Brock Purdy's the real deal. I think Brock Purdy is a really good quarterback that can do a lot of things. He has. I was listening to Kay Adams. She had a guy on today that had been in San Francisco last season. One of the quarterbacks, can't think of his name right now, but he's the guy that had been with the Packers. They brought him in, and he was with the practice. He was with the team. Never really got going, but I think his name might have been Kurt Benkert. I think that's his name. But he was one of the quarterbacks that was with the 49ers for a period of time last year. Well, I think that was during the time that Jimmy Garoppolo was the quarterback. So Benkert came to the 49ers after Lance got hurt. So it was Garoppolo's team. And anyway, he was talking about how even during the run that Jimmy Garoppolo was having. So Brock Purdy's the backup quarterback. What's he doing? Brock Purdy's spending 30 minutes after practice on the field going through the game plan because he's not getting those opportunities with the team. So he's going through the game plan on his own after practice. Now, is that something that most backup quarterbacks do? I would hope so, because after all, it's the NFL, it's your job, right? So spend a little bit of extra time making sure you're ready to do your job if the opportunity arises. So the fact that he did that, that's good. But it also, what happened is once Brock Purdy was thrust into the game against Miami, it showed, right? It showed. And so I think he's a really good player. I think there's a lot to like about him. A couple other things that happened today outside of the quarterbacks, outside of having to hold Kyle Shanahan accountable, which has been a lot of fun. I hope you guys understand where I'm coming from with this. The other thing that came up today was Kyle Shanahan talking about, he was on KMBR. He was asked a couple of questions regarding different play spots on the team. And according to Kyle Shanahan, it sounds like Jake Moody's been kicking a little bit the last couple of days. And it sounds like they think that there's a good chance that he's going to be ready to go week 1. Jake Moody, the kicker. So that came up today. Also, Nick Bosa, that whole thing. This isn't something that I heard from Kyle Shanahan. There goes the Nick Bosa Express. But I had a source hit me up today and said This is what that source had to say to me. Just let me pull it up really quick. I had somebody reach out to me that has been a positive source at times, say that Nick Bosa and his agent have dinner scheduled with the 49ers, and that the plan is that they're going to be hammering out the final aspects of their deal. Now, again, this is just a single source. I don't have two, so that's why I'm not reporting it on. I'm not putting it out there on Twitter. Why I'm not putting it in an article is you need to have a couple of sources there, right? Holland Tracy, member of the Toolbox. See, the Toolbox members are smart. I like them. Holland Tracy says he flew into San Jose today, apparently. Again, that it would be Nick Bosa. And like I said, according to the source that I have, Bosa and his agent are having dinner with the 49ers. The expectation is that they're going to finalize the deal, won't leave until it's figured out. And this is from a source that I have that knows some people within the NFL sphere. I won't get into who it is, but so it sounds like, you add that to the fact that Bosa apparently was in San Jose. We'll, again, none of this has been confirmed. Sources, what I'm hearing is that I think this gets done. My thing with the Bosa deal is that it's going to be done by Sunday. They want to get it done. They want to have Nick Bosa there week one. They understand how important he is to their team. And I think the whole thing with Bosa, it's all about guaranteed money. I saw a tweet earlier today about how what's going on with Nick shouldn't surprise us because of what happened with Joey. I would say this though, it's different. The Joey Bosa holdout wasn't his extension. The Joey Bosa holdout was his rookie contract, not his extension. And the reason Joey Bosa held out his rookie year was because of how the guaranteed money was set up. When the Chargers went to redo his deal and give him the extension, they didn't screw around with the incentive, with the guaranteed money. They gave him really high guaranteed money. I think it was like 79 million or 75 million, somewhere just under 80, right? And I think that's been the holdup with the 49ers is the guarantee number. The 49ers need to get to a spot in order to make it all work. And there's different ways that they need to go through it, but they need to make sure that money is going to be guaranteed at signing. It's going to be about 80 to 85 million, I think, about 85, I think it is, guaranteed at signing. So I think that's been the holdup. So I think we'll see Nick Bosa get done soon. The notorious Gav, how you doing? Member of the Toolbox says, what sacrifices will we have to make next year to pay Bosa this year? Well, that depends on how the Niners and Bosa structure this deal. It's all about structure. They can structure in a way where this year, because of where they are on the cap, they may instead of taking the full, instead of Bosa, the 49ers taking like all the savings possible from a Bosa deal this year, maybe they just save themselves a small amount now and try to take that savings next year or the year after that. What I'm saying? So doing Bosa now may not require any sacrifices next year. Beyond that, we'll see. Like, I know, Gav, you're a big Kyle Juszczyk fan. I do think that, this impacts Kyle Juszczyk. I think it also Trent Williams is a possibility, but the Flyers don't have somebody in place right now to replace Trent Williams. So they usually prepare a year ahead for these types of things, and right now they don't have that guy. So I think, the sacrifices, I don't think there's going to be a lot, because even the new deal for Brandon Ayuk, if that's what if they do decide to hold on to him, again, it's going to be similar to like a Bosa thing or whoever that they do, where they give them the money, but they, save on that cap early on. So I understand they're over the cap right now for next season. They get a Bosa deal done. He's not on the cap, so that's going to hit it. But you also get an Ayuk deal done, you'll probably lower his cap. You're going to lose Kyle Juszczyk and some other guys. So there's things around there that you would do. So In terms of sacrifices, I don't think it's going to be too many. I don't think it's like this mass exodus that some people are fearing. Sarah, the domestic goddess, thank you again for the super chat. Says it's so nice to hear someone gas up Brock. He's been nearly ignored. He's our quarterback. That's how it manifests his greatness by believing in him. Go number 13. Go San Francisco. I think he's a guy that has been really good. He's been good. He deserves to be gassed up if that's what you want to call it. So again, thank you for the super chat. My guy over here, Holland, another member of the toolbox. I'm manifesting Sarah, the domestic goddess. So they're right there with you. Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, but I think they can get Ayuk done. I really do. Um, KW2421 says, do you think the deal gets announced tomorrow, Jack? I hope not. I hope that the 49ers let this thing ride out and maybe they can make that decision and they do that announcement on Monday. It'd be nice to have a couple days off. I've been doing a lot of work. I haven't been able to get to Santa Clara this week, unfortunately, car trouble and dealing with that stuff. But I'm all squared away, so I should be good to go starting next week to get back to Santa Clara for practices and those kind of things. I don't think we're going to see a deal get announced tomorrow. I think it's going to be beyond that. Let's hope it is anyway. I'd like to be able to have the weekend. Uh, all right, this is a good one. Let's finish with this one. Jack, who do you think are the 2023 captains? I think let's go offensively. Christian McCaffrey, because we're going to go through all of it, both sides. Christian McCaffrey. I do think there's a strong possibility that you see Brock Purdy be named a captain this year. Quarterback wasn't a captain the last year. I don't know if about 2021, but I do think McCaffrey, George Kittle, Trent Williams. I'm going to go with Brock Purdy. That's 4. I'm going with Fred Warner, Travarius Ward, Eric Armstead, and Talanoa Hufanga. Make sure you write those down because I don't even remember who they were. I said McCaffrey, Purdy, Williams, Kittle. On the offensive side, maybe Ayuk or Debo. I'm not sure on that one. And then on the defensive side, though, I think Eric Armstead is a captain. I think Fred Warner is a captain. I think a guy like Travarius Ward is a captain, and Talanoa Hufanga. So there's your 8. There's your 8. I think Gav, you said it definitely doesn't think that it's going to be Captain Juice this year. I think you need to go back on your picture campaign like you did last year because that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. But I do agree with you. I don't think Kyle Juszczyk's a captain this year. He's a guy that's really good. Sean 9519ers. I don't know if you have Twitter. If you have Twitter, we can definitely connect. If you have Twitter, look me up on Twitter. Jack Hammer _NFL over on Twitter. Go ahead and get over there. Hit me up in the DMs and we can set something up. I'd like to, I always want to do, I know people always ask me about call-in shows and I'd love to do a call-in show. You know why I don't do call-in shows? Because usually when I've done them in the past, I haven't had a really good turnout. And because I'm not doing, and if you don't have a really good turnout, you end up just talking to one person. Like, I would talk to you for a while. It'd be great to have all you guys call in. And one of the other reasons that I don't is because, there's some people out there that act funny. And, the last couple of times that I did them, I had some people that were just weird. Let's just put it out there. They weren't 49er fans either. They look like you can't tell when you see them on the little thing along the bottom. So that's why I haven't done the call-in shows. But hey, hit me up. I would be more than open to doing a show with you, Sean. That'd be a good time. Another super chat. Gold Towel says Bosa and Brock not the downside to this season. Our offensive line depth will be. What happens when you dump picks on a quarterback project? I think the 49ers are going to be fine on the offensive side of the ball, that line of scrimmage. They got 4 of the 5 guys returning from last year, 4 of the 5 starters from last year returning. It's better than they were the year before. And I do think that Colton McKivitz is going to be just fine. I don't think he's going to be a drop-off from Mike McGlinchey. And if he is, it's going to be very subtle. I think the 49ers will be just fine there. At one point I had done, if you go back through and you look at the guys that have been injured and all that kind of stuff, the 49ers won a lot of games with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback. when they didn't have Trent Williams or Joe Staley or Mike McGlinchey. If you did, it's really cool. Like it's interesting. If you go back from 2019, the games that Joe Staley missed, the games that Trent Williams missed, and the games that Mike McGlinchey missed, and then you match that with the games that Jimmy Garoppolo started or Brock Purdy, and see what the record is. The 49ers will be fine as long as the quarterback plays up to his potential, because Kyle Shanahan can go around that stuff. So Gold Tell, that's a good super chat. I appreciate it. That's a good one. Yeah, that's right. It's not Twitter. It's the X now. Let's see what else. Jack, are you related to Sam Darnold or not? No, I'm not related to Sam Darnold. Gee whiz, not related to Sam Darnold. Come on, man. Let's get weird, Jack. Hey, there you go. Let's get weird. In the name of Jimmy Garoppolo, let's get weird. There's some weird stuff going on in San Francisco. That's why we just spent the last hour holding Kyle Shanahan accountable. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Guys, do me a favor if you can, please. I haven't said it yet, but hit the like button. If you haven't hit the like button yet, please do. We had over 200 people in this chat. Make sure you hit that like button for me. Once you hit the like button, if you're watching, you're already subscribed to the channel. I see some names over there that I haven't seen in the past. Hit the subscribe button and then turn on your notifications, because you want to have those notifications on. I'm not on a set schedule. Some of these guys are really good and they go on at the same time every day. I'm just not at that point. So have your notifications on. That way you'll know. Keep it locked into Inside the Corners with Jack Hammer for all your breaking 49ers news, content, all that stuff. And as a few people said, really, a lot of positivity in this thing. So make sure you do it, because we're going to give you honest information. Hey, we're going to hold people accountable like we just did. Have a great night, everybody. Take care of yourself. Hit the like button, hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and we will go from there. I will be back tomorrow night. I will be